Diabetes Connections is brought to you by inhaled insulin, glucose management in the moment, and by Dexcom. Take control of your diabetes and live life to the fullest with Dexcom.
This is Diabetes Connections with Stacey Sims.
This week, Doug Scalia has completed 25 marathons in 15 states. He's about to add 3 more to his list, including the New York City Marathon as part of a team of people with type 1. He knows it sounds like an impossible feat for many, but he says just about anybody can do it.
When people say, I could never do this, you can. I could never have type 1 diabetes. I would get queasy when blood was drawn. I would literally faint at the sight of blood, right? So try it and be ready for the lows because you're going to go low, and be ready for the highs because you're going to go high. You just do it.
Doug was diagnosed as a young adult, and in addition to all the marathons, he's played in the World Series of Poker. So we have a lot to talk about. This podcast is not intended as medical advice. If you have those kinds of questions, please contact your healthcare provider. Welcome to another week of the show. I'm always so glad to have you here. You know we aim to educate and inspire about diabetes with a focus on people who use insulin. I'm your host, Stacey Sims. My son was diagnosed with type 1 right before he turned 2. That was back in 2006. My husband lives with type 2. I don't have diabetes. I have a background in broadcasting, and that's how you get the podcast. When I started this podcast in 2015, people were still blogging, which doesn't happen as much anymore, of course, but there's still a few out there. The diabetes online community, I think, was still in its what I would call like its original or older form. And I say all this because I want to talk for a second about DSMA, because that's how I met Doug. And I put met in quotes because this conversation is the first we've ever had, even though we met at least 10 years ago, probably more than that. So DSMA, if you're not familiar, is Diabetes Social Media Advocacy. And it was a weekly Twitter chat started by Charisse Shockley. She's still on Twitter. DSMA is still a hashtag many people use. And DSMA isn't really a weekly chat anymore so much, but Charisse has hinted that after more than 10 years, it was ready to evolve into something else. So we're all kind of waiting to see what she is coming up with. I'm very excited about this. I bring it up because we talk about it a little bit in the interview. It's late in the interview, but I wanted to make sure everybody knew what we were talking about. And if you're on Twitter, it's definitely worth using that hashtag and looking up what other people are posting under the hashtag DSMA, and that's what it stands for, Diabetes Social Media Advocacy. I also want to mention that in this interview, Doug is wearing 2 insulin pumps. He really couldn't go into too much detail. He is part of a clinical study. You'll hear his pump go off once or twice, maybe his pumps. I don't really know which one it was. I did have to edit a couple of things out, and I think he kind of alludes to that. So that's what's going on there. It's not some new piece of technology. It is literally 2 pumps because he's in a clinical trial. As you will hear, Doug Scalia is part of the Beyond Type Run team for the New York City Marathon, which is happening on November 6th. This is far from his first marathon. He has run 25 marathons in 15 states. In fact, by the time this episode airs, it might be 26 marathons in 16 states. When we spoke, he had 3 upcoming, including that New York City Marathon. As I mentioned, Doug also plays poker, and he has played in the World Series of Poker, and he kind of explains how you play in and do all of that. I thought that was really interesting. He's mentioned it on Twitter during those chats that I'd mentioned, and I've always wondered, what happens to his blood sugar, right? Is it like a sport? So he explains all of that. And Doug had a very unique name on Twitter. I guess he still does. And stay tuned after the interview, a little bit about my book, but it's not what you think. It's actually about my voice. I got a little bit of behind the scenes stuff. So stick around. Okay, Diabetes Connections is brought to you by Afrezza. And I know you have a lot of questions about Afrezza. Every time I mention it, the emails and DMs come in. So what's it all about? Well, Afrezza is an ultra-rapid-acting mealtime insulin. You breathe it in using an oral inhaler. Afrezza gives you the flexibility to eat when you want while providing proven blood sugar control. Afrezza's ultra-rapid action allows you to inhale your insulin right when food arrives, even unexpectedly, so you can be spontaneous but still in control without the need for injections at mealtime. Find out more and see if Afrezza is right for you. Go to diabetes-connections.com and click on the Afrezza logo. Afrezza can cause serious side effects, including sudden lung problems and low potassium, and is not for patients with chronic lung disease such as asthma or COPD, or for patients allergic to insulin. Tell your doctor if you ever smoked, have ever had kidney or liver problems, a history of lung cancer, or if you're pregnant or breastfeeding. Most common side effects are low blood sugar, cough, and sore throat. Severe low blood sugar can be fatal. Do not replace long-acting insulin with Afrezza. Afrezza is not for use to treat diabetic ketoacidosis. Please see full prescribing information, including boxed warning, medication guide, and instructions for use on afrezza.com/safety. Doug, thanks for joining me. I'm glad you could take some time out of your training schedule to jump in. It's great to talk to you.
I'm glad to be here.
I kind of laughed when I said that, but I'm not laughing at your training schedule. I am in awe of people like you who run marathons. So before we jump in and talk about diabetes and everything else in your story, how is your training right now? How much are you running these days on average?
Yeah, and I don't let my training dictate my personal schedule as well. I'll trade days up. So this morning I was supposed to run 8 miles. I had a doctor's appointment this morning early and then this interview today. So I skipped today's run and it'll go tomorrow. But my weekly mileage, it's a cutback week. So this weekend I only have 12. I say only, kind of tongue in cheek. But last weekend on Sunday I ran 20. This coming weekend I also have 20. So I'll run 3 20s every other week towards the end of the training. And then it's taper. I've got 3 fall marathons on the schedule. I've got Twin Cities on October 2nd, New York on November 6th, and Memphis, St. Jude's on December 3rd. So I'm in the peak, and I'm looking forward to some taper and some relaxing time. I'm starting to get a little burnt out from it.
I can't even comprehend 3 marathons in that short period of time, but you have done this before. So let me back up. Let's talk about diabetes. You were diagnosed in 99. Tell me that story. How old were you?
I was 20, so it was a month before my 21st birthday. And, it was all the classic symptoms, weight loss, always thirsty, always going to the bathroom. And I didn't have insurance. I went from a part-time role at my company to full-time, was eligible for insurance. And the first thing I did was schedule a doctor's appointment. And I remember it was the morning. I went by myself. 20-year-old going to the doctor by themselves. I was responsible enough to do that out of the house and doing that sort of thing. And the doctor comes back into the office and says, well, I've got good news and I've got bad news. And I knew back then still about the classic symptoms. And so I kind of had an idea that maybe it was type 1 diabetes. And that was kind of the good news, bad news. The good news is you were right. And the bad news is you were right. And kind of like, we've got a solution. I remember they sent me to St. Louis Park and met with an endo and got insulin. And I remember my first low that day. So, yeah.
Do you remember how you had any inkling of the symptoms of type 1?
Yeah. Well, my grandmother was type 1. She's passed. So they didn't talk a lot about her diabetes growing up. I became aware of that kind of after. I don't remember how I had heard that those were the symptoms, because you're right. That's a lot of what people talk about today are these are the symptoms. But I just kind of had a feeling. I knew one person I worked with, he had type 1, and maybe it was from conversations with him, and he kind of positioned it like, I don't think it's type 1, but it'd be good for you to go in and get checked out. And it was type 1. So
you weren't, and this is quite obvious from what you've said, but you were not misdiagnosed. There was no question at that appointment.
There was no question. Yeah, I've got even the sheet with the printout of the blood sugar levels. I don't know if it's the A1C on there or what it is, but I've got the time and date and the doctor's name, saved up in a drawer. I don't know how or why I have it still. But every year on my Diaversary, I kind of pull it out and take a picture and post it on my social channels.
It's funny what we save. I still have the notebook that I brought to the hospital when Benny was diagnosed. It's I think it's got 2 pages worth of writing on it. It's this whole big notebook I brought to take everything down. And I do the same thing. I look at it like, oh gosh, look how cute it was. We thought we were going to get this under control and really understand it this quickly.
It's so hard to even think of, everything that you need to figure out right away. I didn't even realize that. And sorry, I got an alarm here from my pump, suspend before low. Okay, so I didn't even realize that there was like 2 different kinds of insulin, basal and bolus.
Do you remember what you started with then? Did you start on basal bolus insulin? Because in 1999, you still could have done the whole NPH regular. A lot of changes has happened since then.
I was on NPH and regular, correct. And that regimen, I'm so glad to be off of that plan and, be able to have more structure or less structure to the day, kind of eat when you want, how you want.
So you alluded to your running journey. I was going to ask if you were already a runner when you were diagnosed.
I was not. I started running in 2011. I wasn't a runner. I was a former smoker. I had gained a bit of weight from when I quit smoking. I picked up food a little bit more than I probably should have. And I just kind of talked myself into it. It was one of those things where I talked about it. I'm going to do a marathon. I saw an article somewhere online that said weight loss. People don't lose weight when they have a weight loss goal because it's set on a negative emotion. And so rather you should sign up for a 5K, raise money for a charity. And as a result, you may lose weight, right? So I skipped the charity. I skipped the 5K and I signed up for a marathon.
No, you
didn't. I remember I did. Yeah. A lady I worked with, she qualifies for Boston, and she's a coach at a local college, or was at the time. And she put together my training program for me. I couldn't run a quarter mile at the time. And I remember my first run was February 6th of 2011. And I ran the marathon in October. It's the first Sunday of the weekend in October. So whatever day that fell on 2011. And I finished. It took 6 hours, but I finished.
What? I got to tell you, that was not the story I was expecting. What is your mindset during that time? I mean, obviously there were several months there and you had a training program. Take me a little bit through that, because I imagine, you start out, you can't run very far at all. Then maybe you hit 3 miles, maybe hit 5 miles. When did you really start thinking, I can do this marathon?
Well, I remember my training program initially was on Saturdays, or the weekend run. It was run until you have to walk. And I remember there was this guy at the gym who would always come up and talk to you, the talkers at the gym, right? So he'd always, come over and talk. And I was so close to hitting 2 miles. And I just told him, I said, hey, love to talk to you. However, I'm really close to hitting 2 miles for the first time ever. And I really want to hit 2 miles. So I hit 2 miles, and that was like a month or two into the program. Once I got into the actual marathon training, I remember being afraid of, I think the first week was 8 miles, and then you go to 10 and 14. And when I saw 14, it felt like forever, and it probably was forever. And looking back today, it's like 14. Yeah, I could hang up this call and go run 14 if I wanted. And I'd probably say it was something like only 14, right? But mindset, it was a lot different then versus now.
That's amazing to me. So when you said you finished that first marathon in 6 hours, do you remember you crossed the finish line? Was your first thought like, oh, I can't wait to do that again, or I am never doing that again, but I'm glad I did it?
We did a family trip. My wife and I and my in-laws, we were in Duluth, because Duluth, Minnesota is beautiful in the fall. So we were up there a couple of weeks before I ran Twin Cities Marathon. And somewhere I saw something about Grandma's Marathon. So I actually signed up for Grandma's Marathon before I ran Twin Cities Marathon. And so it was kind of like it forced me to continue training and push myself forward. So I don't think if I would have signed up for the second event, I necessarily would have said, oh my gosh, I'm going to do that again, right?
Got it.
And my running kind of goes in waves. So, 2011, 12, and 13, probably some of my best improvement years where I could really see I went from nothing to finishing to, Grandma's, I ran almost an hour faster than I did in Twin Cities. Wow. And then there's other years where, my mileage was low and I didn't have the motivation to train. And it kind of was more of like you're forcing yourself to do it. It was more of a chore than pleasure going out and doing it. Whereas now I think I found the right regimen and the right pace and the right strategy, and I'm very consistent, and the consistency is what's paying off and leading me to want to continue, right? I don't want to lose that base. We're getting close to winter where I turn into a bear typically. I bought a treadmill, so I'll use the treadmill, and I'm signed up for another spring race. So the spring race is going to force me to continue to train and do what I need to do. I'm not going to spend $1,000 on flight and hotel to go out and do an event where I don't have a good effort. So traveling helps the motivation as well.
So what are you up to now? How many marathons?
I have 25 marathons and 15 states.
Wow. That almost sounded like you're trying to hit more states. Do you have any big goals like that?
Yeah, I'm looking to hit every state. And I started that goal probably around 2016. I kind of seesawed between Twin Cities and Grandma's. And I was like, I should get out and see some more of the country. So I've seen a lot of the Midwest. I've made my way down to Arizona. I did Hawaii. I did Pennsylvania. And then a lot of my races are kind of in the Midwest here. So I'm looking to get to the West Coast and East Coast and try more. So 15 states. Probably I have my kind of in my head what I want to do next year. I have 3 states on the agenda for next year that bring me through October. So I'm like starting to think 2-3 years out. I've got a race that I know I want to do June 20th, 2026, because it'll fall on my birthday in Alaska. I think it's Mayor's Marathon in Alaska. So why not run a marathon on your birthday?
Why not?
Why not? Yeah, why not? What could be better?
So that leads us very easily to the New York City Marathon. This is something that you're doing with Beyond Type 1. It fits perfectly in your plan to get to more states. How'd you hook up with Beyond Type 1? How did you find out about this, and why are you running it with them?
There was one gal who was in charge of this Facebook group for Type 1 runners, and she asked for some help. It was a little bit too much and wanted some help adminning the page. And then I also invited another friend. So we have 3 or 4 admins on the page, and we had a couple thousand members. Somewhere along the way, Beyond Type 1, they have Type 1 Run as one of their programs. And they came to us and said, hey, we really like how many users you have in this page. Can we rebrand it Type 1 Run? So, of course, we said, yeah, why not? Our main goal is to connect runners with Type 1 to connect with other runners. I ran Little Rock Marathon in 2019, and me and one of the other admins, I signed up for that race so I could go meet him, and he had me over for dinner, and I met his family. And we're actually connecting again to run Memphis in December. So for me, it was about the community engagement and wanting to connect with other Type 1s. And like you said, I'm going to run one in New York anyway. So why not sign up, represent my community with Beyond Type 1, raise some money. I love, what they're doing for the community. And why not, drive some awareness to that while we're already doing it.
Doug, I am not a marathoner. I am not a runner. I've been to exactly one marathon, and it is the New York City Marathon. Years and years ago, I was lucky enough to be at the finish line at the party there. It is extraordinary, as I'm sure many marathon finish lines are. But of course, as someone who's really from New York and grew up outside of New York City, I think it's amazing. Have you been to New York City before? Have you run any of those streets yet?
I have. We were in New York in 2018. And we stayed near Central Park. Is that Manhattan, I believe? I'm not familiar on the terms there. But so I ran to Central Park and did, the Central Park thing. And so mostly just Central Park. From the hotel, Central Park, I ran, I think 12 miles total. So it was around Central Park a couple of times. I thought Central Park is definitely big. But like when you go out on a 20-mile run, you can see a lot of a city or a place or whatever the case may be. So I've run in New York, but I usually watch the event on TV, something I wouldn't have done 10 years ago. So yeah, I'm excited to run it. Big crowds. I remember in Chicago, there was a lot of loud, big crowds. Twin Cities is a really good local race too, and they get a lot of spectators too. But New York City, I've heard, is just incredible.
Yeah, well, I'm excited for you all. I'd love to know, what kind of advice do you have? I mean, is there anything that you do in particular in terms of managing blood sugars that you found to be, maybe some tips and tricks?
Generally, what I like to look at is, where was I? So what was my blood sugar an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours ago? What is it now? And then what's going on, right? Do I have any active insulin? Did I eat? Do I have any food on board? And how is that going to impact my blood sugar, right? So if I look at my CGM graph and I see that I was 200 and now I'm 100, and I'm coming down, is there a reason for that, right? So I try to plan, do I need to have a snack before I go out on the run? I've done a lot of my runs in the morning, so I'm typically fasted. Depending on how far I'm running, so if I'm going, and it could be far or it could be time, and it's going to vary for everyone, but I like to use a product called GenUcan. If you look at the back of the box, it shows a graph of blood sugar spikes and stable blood sugars. I don't know how this stuff works. I tried it once quite a few years ago and I didn't love it. And I tried it again and I love it. I absolutely love it. You take it about 30 minutes before your activity. I'll probably only use it for runs an hour or more. The gel packs are 15 grams. The powders are 27 or 32 grams. And they give you a really nice steady flow of stable blood sugars. Before I used it, an 8-mile run, I would need 4 gel packs. Those are 23 grams each. Whereas now I probably only need the 15 to 20 grams from the UCAN. So I can't explain how it works, but it works.
Where do you get it?
I get it at my run store.
Oh, okay.
You can
so
sign up
retail
for
product.
text alerts. Yeah, it's a retail product. You can get it directly from them. They have coupon offers. There's different ways to get a discount. I have a discount program at my run store. So everything for me there is 20% off. So ask for a discount, see what kind of programs they have available, try it. You don't bolus for it. It just, you take it 30 minutes before you go run. You'll probably start to feel a little bit of an increase on your CGM line. And I've got another buddy who bikes. He'll go on a 2-hour bike ride and use the gel and steady blood sugar. So that a lot. And then during my run, depending on what my blood sugar level is, I may suspend my pump because I'm running enough and I don't need that basal delivery. And I really check my numbers. So kind of depending on what's going on with my numbers, if I'm say 150, I'll leave the basal on. If I'm 120 with 1 or 2 arrows going down, I'll generally take a gel and wait to see if my blood sugar hits 150 again. If I hit 150 again, that's kind of my measurement of I'll turn on the basal again. There's a lot of runs where I'll go on where I have my basal on and off probably a couple of times. It's probably a little bit more management than I'd love to see with it, but I've done it for so long, I'm used to it. On a marathon, I'll bring 8 gels. So I have 4 in each pocket. I actually just bought a speed belt a couple of days ago. Mm-hmm. That worked out really slick for holding on to the gels. You can fit 10 to 14 gels in that sucker, and it doesn't bounce, and it worked out really well. So I'd recommend something to carry the gels. On my shorter runs, less than 2 hours, I don't generally carry my tester, but on a marathon, I'll carry my tester with me to just double check, because your blood sugars can move.
You'll bring fast. Like a meter with a Lancer and the whole thing?
Correct. Yep.
Okay.
And I'll test while I'm running. I won't stop. I kind of put the meter in my mouth and pull the test strip out and pull my blood and keep going along.
Yep.
And it's generally pretty close. I probably should just trust my system. But I just, when I ran Cincinnati's Flying Pig on May 1st, I went back and looked. I tested 12 times from walking to the start to the finish line. So maybe a little too often. That's over a 6-hour period. So every half hour or so.
Hey, it works. It's working for you. I wouldn't mess with it.
It works. Yeah, exactly. I have a hydration. They sell Nathan Hydration has a water bottle kit where you have a plate you can put keys or something small, maybe an old flip phone you could put in it. You can't really put an iPhone in it. Mm-hmm. Or a bigger Droid today. But I put my test strips and my glucometer into that compartment. And then I don't carry the water bottle on the run because there's aid stations, but it's more of my handheld blood glucose monitoring thing. And I'll put my phone kind of where the water bottle would go. And it's not too much to carry.
In addition to that, do you wear anything special? That sounds ridiculous when it's coming out of my mouth, but shorts with pockets or you have the.
No, it's not ridiculous at all because my first marathon, my first marathon, I was such a rookie and probably made all the mistakes. Cotton socks, shorts with underwear. God forbid you wear underwear.
Please,
and then maybe even a cotton. No, you need to know. And then a cotton shirt, right?
Right.
You need to know this. So if you're running and you want to take on running, get a good pair of running socks, right? I love Fit Sock. Think of all these brands I'm naming in this interview.
I love it. We're going to call them all up and get an affiliate code.
Yeah,
for
we
you.
should call them and get some affiliates. Let's do it. Fit Sock is amazing. I've got pairs of those socks that are 10 years old that, I like buying them when they're new and soft and comfortable, but even when they're old, they still are just really good. I could run in a rainstorm and my feet be soaked after an hour. And if it stops raining and it's dry, my feet will be dry. I won't get blisters. I love it. So get a good pair of shoes, go to the run store, get fitted for a good pair of shoes, get a good pair of run socks that are like moisture wicking and not cotton. And then your running shorts, you got to get running shorts with a liner in them. And that's why I said the underwear, right? Built-in liner. It's kind of like a swimsuit, but it's not like a swimsuit. And then a good dry fit shirt. And when it comes to shirts, if you're going to start running a lot, events anyway, if you're going to run events, don't buy a lot of run shirts because your closet's going to be full of them. Finisher shirts.
Yeah.
You won't need to buy those anymore.
What about keeping your equipment on, your diabetes stuff? Anything in particular? I mean, you're sweating a lot. You're running in the rain.
I just clip. No, I'll sometimes on a marathon, I'll sometimes put a second sight on in case the sight falls off, if it sweats off. But I've only had it fall off once, and I did have the secondary sight placed and moved it over, and it worked out fine. But generally, the sights haven't fallen off.
So this is the first time you and I have spoken, Doug, but we've kind of chatted online for a long time. I don't know if you're one of the originals from the DSMA chats or if I've just seen you on Twitter forever, but you had posted many times about playing poker. And I always wanted to talk to you about that because I don't play poker like you do, but I like cards and I've been to casinos and I've always wondered, your adrenaline is going, the dopamine is coming out. There's so much going on in your body. I'm curious, is there anything you need to do? Well, first I should ask, before I get all excited and jump in about diabetes, can you explain a little bit about what you do? Because you've played kind of competitively, right?
I mean, a little. I mean, for me, it's more of like my entertainment value. People golf and fish, and I'd argue those are pretty expensive hobbies. And for me with poker, I'll either play a cash game or a tournament, but very low stakes. So one tournament I played in, it was a $500 buy-in, and there was a $120 satellite to work your way into it. So I played the smaller event, made my way into the bigger event, and then did okay in the bigger event, right? So would I go out and spend $500 on a poker tournament? Not typically. 2-day tournament. And so you're right, the adrenaline and, that stuff kind of kicks in. Or the other event it was a World Series of Poker event. That was a $400 event. So very, relatively low stakes, right? But I made it to day 3. It's long days. You're playing for 12 hours, a lot of anxiety over, what's going to happen. And I do remember in the deep run that I had in 2019, my blood sugar was so high, and I say so high, it was like 200, 225. And I remember thinking, gosh, could I quit doing correction boluses and just what is going on? I'm like, oh my gosh, it's the adrenaline. Yeah. It's the, my body is kicking in. I'm tired. I'm drinking Red Bulls or whatever else, sugar-free Red Bulls, of course. But I'm drinking, so I've got the caffeine kicking in, I've got the adrenaline kicking in. I should probably go to bed. I'm excited about what are my odds of doing anything here. So yeah, that was a lot of fun. I don't ever anticipate seeing myself get back to that type of finish. It was 13,000 people played, and I finished in 68th. So it was really, really fun.
How do you enter the World Series of Poker? Do you kind of pick, you have to play your way in?
Yeah, you pick your event that you want to play, and you pay the entry fee, and you get a starting stack of chips. And basically, they call it blinds, right? So let's say 25, 50. If you start with 10,000 chips, blinds start out 25 and 50. Every half hour or hour, they go up. Maybe they go to 50, 100. So you can't sit on your stack and make your way to the end. You have to be active in hands and grow that chip stack. And the person with all the chips at the end wins. In this type of event, 15% of the players got paid. So if you pay, $400 to play, if 100 people play, maybe you win $600 if you go on 15th. And then, it's tiered up to first place is going to win 20 to 40% of the total prize pool, depending on how many people enter the tournament. And when you're out of chips, you're just done, and you either go home or
is the whole thing, is it in Vegas? Is the whole thing there, or are you playing out of town and then playing your way in?
This was all in Las Vegas.
Wow. How did you get interested in poker? Did you pick it up as a kid? I mean, I learned how to shuffle cards when I was 3 years old. We played with my grandparents, my dad's parents. Yeah. They lived quite a ways away. We didn't see them a ton growing up. But when we were there, I do remember we'd play penny but it wasn't there that I picked it up. I really picked it up from somebody I worked with.
my manager at the time had this monthly game, and I had this vision of, like people smoking cigars and green caps, and, what is this going to be like? Right. And it was, kind of like, I like to gamble and play blackjack or whatever else. So let's, could I come to the game and check it out? And so that was in 2003. And we actually had a group of people that we just played a monthly tournament. It was the second Friday of every month. And, we'd get together for that. And I remember even going to the casino for the first time thinking like, oh my gosh, this is overwhelming. Like how do I get to a table?
Yeah.
How much money do I need?
How fast am I going to lose my money?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I lost it pretty quick my first time playing live. I actually did okay, but now it's like I go to the casino and I'm like, oh, I know what to say, I know what to do, and I'm ready to be done 5 minutes in, or I'm ready to play all day, depending on how it goes. Like I said, it's entertainment value.
Yeah, yeah. Do you remember diabetes-wise? You said you were going higher. Did you crash? Do you remember? I mean, I'm not asking for tips and tricks when you go to a casino with diabetes, but I am curious.
I didn't crash at all. And probably the first day I didn't really even realize that the numbers were starting to get kind of out of control until closer to the end of day 2. I have a few pictures that I posted of me with my insulin pump, like on the rail, or pictures of like the pump or the CGM numbers or whatever the case may be. And after doing that a few times, I was kind of like, my numbers are kind of high. Like, oh, it's adrenaline.
Yeah.
And the same thing happens race morning. I'll wake up for a marathon and suddenly I'm 300 and I didn't need anything. It's just the adrenaline kicks you up. Don't correct it though. It'll work its way down. Those adrenaline highs work themselves out.
Yeah. It's like sports. It's like, as you said, it's like running.
Yep. All
right. I have to ask you, Doug, while I have you. Many of the original DSMA people and the old diabetes online community, I don't know if you remember this, but there was one day, and I'll have to search up the tweets. We were completely gobsmacked one night when we all realized, and I think you actually had to spell it out for us literally, that all of your online name that you use, which I could try to pronounce, right? Salguadmai. No one ever had any idea what that was.
I don't even know.
Right, salgutamai. I say to my head salgutamay, which makes no sense because I moved the D.
Yeah. Yeah.
Tell us what that is.
Do you still not know? You know now.
Of course I know. But yeah, just tell me. I want to hear you say it.
It's just I am Douglas backwards. So it's just an easy way if you're trying to tell somebody your handle, what are you on Twitter? What are you on Instagram? If you can remember I am Douglas, it's just I am Douglas backwards.
I still think that is brilliant. It's rare, right? I don't know anybody else with that kind of handle. What gave you that idea?
I don't even remember, to be honest. I've had it for so long. I do remember in high school, there was some story of the Americans, and in the story, Americans was spelled backwards. And I don't even remember what the story is about. I don't know if I picked it up from that or just life is a little backwards sometimes. So I did I'm Douglas. I don't remember. I've had it. Honestly, I've had it for so long that I don't even remember. It was like my AOL screen name.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. I could do that as like a fake account for me. It would be something like Ye Cats May, Stacey back.
Right.
How did you find DSMA in the online community? How did you find the diabetes online community?
I don't remember that either. And I remember one of my other friends, because I was like, what does this even stand for? Like, I see these DSMA posts and like, what does it mean? And I remember one of my non-diabetic friends had to tell me that it was diabetes social media advocates. Is that what it is?
Yep. Advocacy.
I haven't been on it in the longest time, but I used to get on it pretty regularly. Yeah. And I remember there was many times where, Wednesdays are the long runs of the week and I was running in the evenings. And so, I'd be on the treadmill paying attention to DSMA, and I remember saying like, I'm not, trying to brag, like I'm running. I'm joining you from the treadmill.
I was always trying to join from baseball games or put the kids to bed. It was just I look back on, it was 12 years ago, I think, that DSMA started. So it's been a long time. We've kind of all known each other that way for a very long time. So it's kind of cool to finally get to talk to you. Before I let you go, just kind of circling back to the marathon stuff, anything that you're kind of looking forward to with those 3 in the fall, or anything you want us to know about your trek with Beyond Type 1?
So just mostly just connecting with other people, meeting the people that I've interacted with online and meeting them in person.
Any advice for people with diabetes who are listening and are thinking, is he nuts? I can't even run a 5K with diabetes. Any advice for starting out on a journey like this?
Yes, just do it. It's like when you first got diagnosed with type 1 and you had to count carbs, right? If you can't run, do a run walk, look up an online program, Couch to 5K, and you'll go from not being able to do it to doing it. And when people say, I could never do this, you can. I could never have type 1 diabetes. I would get queasy when blood was drawn. I would literally faint at the sight of blood, right? So try it and be ready for the lows because you're going to go low, and be ready for the highs because you're going to go high. You just do it. It sounds too simple, but I think
once you make up your mind, that's really the hardest part.
Yeah. And, part of my original journey, Stacey, on that, I don't think I even believed myself that I would do it. I called the local news channel and kind of sold to them. Overweight type 1 diabetic, runs a marathon, has no base. Because I thought I would need the pressure of that. And I think in my mind, I thought if they said yes, I figured if they, I kind of pictured them following me and seeing my journey. Well, the weekend before the marathon, they called me and they're like, we want to run the story. And I'm like, you're freaking kidding me, right? So I had to go leave work, do this deal. I was with them for an hour or two, and they put together a 90-second clip. But in the end, I didn't need that. Because I didn't know they were going to do that until the end, right? So I didn't need it. I just needed to know that I was going to get to marathon day, and I'm either going to be ready for it or I'm not, right?
I love it. Yeah, I don't advise, as you listen, calling your local TV station unless you're really committed to doing something.
Yeah.
That was really, really gutsy.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, it was so great to talk to you. Thank you so much for sharing so much time with us. And I'll definitely be looking for you as these marathons come up, and keep us posted when you're going to different states. We'd love to cheer you on.
I'm glad you reached out.
You're listening to Diabetes Connections with Stacey Sims.
Much more information I'm linking up to Doug's fundraising page for the New York City Marathon, part of the Beyond Type 1 team. And again, I'll link up to the Twitter Diabetes Social Media Advocacy page as well. Those Twitter chats were just wonderful. They really helped me so much, especially when Benny was little. But I remember, oh my gosh, they were 9 o'clock Eastern. So trying to put him to bed and Leah to bed, and then jump on Twitter. And then sometimes he was playing baseball. I remember as he got older, and I was always trying to get home in time to be part of DSMA. And then always something crazy would happen diabetes-wise. So he really grew up during that chat. It's fun to look back. All right, so in a minute, I want to tell you about doing an audiobook. I'm about to dive in and start taping Still the World's Worst Diabetes Mom. And I just thought it'd be fun to share a little bit of behind the scenes stuff. So hang on one second. But first, Diabetes Connections is brought to you by Dexcom. And it's hard to remember what things were like before we started using Dexcom. I mean, I haven't forgotten, but I guess what I mean is it really is so different now. When Benny was a toddler, we were doing something like 10 finger sticks a day. Even when he got older, we did at least 6 to 8 every day, and more when he wasn't feeling well or something was off. But with each iteration of Dexcom, we've done fewer and fewer sticks. The G6 eliminates finger sticks for calibration and diabetes treatment decisions. Just thinking about Benny's little worn-out fingertips makes me so glad that Dexcom has helped us come so far. It's an incredible tool. And Benny's fingertips are healthy and smooth, which I never thought would happen when he was in preschool. If your glucose alerts and readings from the G6 do not match symptoms or expectations, use a blood glucose meter to make diabetes treatment decisions. Learn more. Go to diabetes-connections.com and click on the Dexcom logo. Okay, fingers crossed I didn't jinx myself. I was talking to a friend of mine this morning, and we were discussing the upcoming audiobook for Still the World's Worst Diabetes Mom. I did this for the last book. It was terrific. I mean, my experience was terrific. I hope you thought the book was terrific, but it was so much fun to tape it because writing the book was really rewarding. But there was something about recording it and I acted out some of the stories sort of, and I have a voice for Benny and I have a voice for the endocrinologist. I don't know. It makes me very happy. It's a little silly to do all of that. But I was talking to my friend and I said, I'm starting to tape it this weekend. And she said, oh, I hope, you don't get a cold. I was like, what are you saying? I hope you don't get a cold. My gosh, like I'm going to lose my voice. So now I'm all worried because I'm doing 2 podcast episodes a week and I still do a little bit of commercial voice work. And I don't know. So I'm very worried, but I'm sure it'll be fine. I'm going to tape some of it and put it on Instagram. I'll throw some reels in or something of me taping it. But it really is fun. And here's a little bit of inside baseball if you're interested in Audible and that sort of thing. When I did the first book, my plan was to kind of sidestep the Audibles and Amazon and things like that and just put it on my own website and sell it from there. But oh my gosh, once you get into the audio production and then the distribution of this kind of thing, it really seemed prohibitive to try to do it myself. It wasn't so difficult to load it to the website because I do the podcast every week, but how would you load it so that people can listen to it easily, right? I couldn't make every chapter a podcast episode. Oh, I guess you could really do that. I guess I could release it as a weekly podcast episode or monthly or something like that, but that just seems like a silly way to read a book. I don't know. Now I'm going to think about that. As I said, I'll start recording this weekend. And last time around, the audiobook, the release lagged a little bit behind the paperback and the ebook. So hopefully we'll get them all together this time. That was really just me learning how long it can take something to load on Audible. It really is much faster once you get your book on Amazon, but sending it to Audible takes a long time to get approved. So that's a little bit of what's going on over here. I will keep you posted. If you have any questions about that kind of production or anything, definitely let me know. All right, thank you to my editor, John Buchanan from Audio Editing Solutions, who will also be editing the audiobook. So, John, those files are coming at you soon. And thank you so much for listening. I'm Stacey Sims. I'll see you back here in just a couple of days. Until then, be kind to yourself.
Diabetes Connections is a production of Stacey Sims Media. All rights reserved, all wrongs avenged.